All right, welcome to week 6. So after work video coming at you here. We're gonna. I think I have a virus or something. I wish it didn't do that. But anyways, let's see here. So yep. So let's go back to my channel, and yeah. So go to my channel and go to where I left off. Now, typically when you take a course, so let's typical grading scale. So you can still get an A even if you only do 90% of the course. I kind of messed up in week 5. I just kind of wasn't feeling week 5. You know, it's about like the deep stuff. It's about like going in and like really evaluating the dark places, and I just kind of wasn't feeling it, because this is like for my professional channel to like help me handle stress better. So like I wasn't really feeling like going into those deep dark places. So I didn't do very well on week 5. I actually missed a session of the formal practice. I didn't do hardly any of the supplemental readings, but the good news is I got all the informal practice done, and I got all of the videos and readings done as well. So if you look at a typical grading scale, you know, if you miss an assignment here and there, you can get a B minus, even if you only do 80% of what's asked. So I definitely got at least a B, if not a B plus or even an A for what I did for week 5. But the good news is it's time to move on to week 6, which might be a bit easier. So I'm going to start by reading through everything here. So week 6 is about mindfulness and communication, mountain and lake meditation. So that's much better on track. Communication, that's really important to me. Especially on this professional channel here. If you were to consider all the truly stressful situations in your life, you'd probably find that many, if not most, involve other people. This week, we focus on communication and what it means to be mindful in our interactions with others, whether it be family members, coworkers, or neighbors. Our focus up until now has been on our internal world, thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Now we move from the intrapersonal to the interpersonal, taking into account another's world and the place where their world and ours meet. This means recognizing that the other person or persons have their own perceptions, feelings, and needs, which are almost certainly different than ours. Listening. Most of us don't really listen very deeply when we are in conversation. As Tara Brach says in The Sacred Art of Listening, we spend most of our moments when someone is planning what we're going to say, evaluating it, trying to come up with our presentation of ourselves, or controlling the situation. Pure listening is a letting go of control. It's not easy and takes training. The bottom line is when we are listened to, we feel connected. When we're not listened to, we feel separate. So if you're thinking more about how you're going to respond, or you're actually preparing a response, that's different than listening. When it comes to listening, it's only about what the other person is saying. So if the other person is saying something where your response, your canned response, is no longer fits, you know, the flow of the conversation, then you need to come up with a new response. All right, so dealing with conflict. Effective communication with those who we disagree is extraordinarily difficult. All right, this is perfect. Back on track. I'm glad I'm doing this again now. If you are like most people, you have a fallback strategy to deal with conflict that was learned early in life, one that is habitual and embedded in interactions with others. The 3 most common strategies are accommodate, be nice, demand, me first, or withdrawal. I don't care. And I will say I probably am more the withdrawal one. There is a 4th way, one that involves investigating both your world and the other's world. that can sometimes yield a surprising and creative solution that honors both worlds. And I would say the second one I would say is the accommodate. But the fourth way involves investigating both your world and the other's world. That can sometimes yield a surprising and creative solution that honors both worlds. So I definitely have done the demand one before. I think they're strategies, right? And they're the most common strategies. Does that mean they're the most effective? Maybe not. But I'm sure anyone watching this can relate and think of instances where they've tried all three of these common strategies. And in my time in my hobby doing juggling, I found it's kind of fun to do this one, and just say like, okay, let's do this pattern, let's make it work. Here it is, and then that can be a way to go into the fourth way, which it's like, okay, we tried the pattern, it doesn't work. Here's how we can fix it. That's what's really exciting, is when you bring in an idea to the table, it turns out to be like flawed. And then it turns into a really like good conversation that comes up with a solution that is just all around better. So these other these strategies here on their own are definitely not as effective as this fourth strategy, which involves investigating both your world and the other's world, and that can lead to surprising and creative solutions that honors both worlds and create something collaborative that is at a higher level than could be created individually. In the martial art Aikido, this would be called blending, a move that harms neither party and turns conflict into more of a dance than a fight. This is complex and an art form in itself, and forms the basis of Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, NVC, something that is briefly introduced this week. So I'm a big fan of NVC. I've read the book and gone into that, and it's been helpful for sure. For me, it has. And then videos. In the short but powerful video Deep Listening, Frank Ostasiki suggests listening not just from our head and ears, but also from our heart and body. And in The Power of Empathy and Communication, and Wiser Cornell tells a wonderful story about how a little girl's meltdown in a daycare is transformed by a single expression of empathy. A lesson is that is applicable even in the boardroom or politics. In The Art of Being Heard, Susan Piver describes 3 principles of mindful communication: timing, listening, agendalessness. That's I think the really hard one. In the next 2 videos, Tara Brach talks about the sacred art of listening, and in Awakening Through Conflict, she begins to answer the question of how one deals with conflict in communication. When dealing with others, blame is easy and empathy difficult, so it's perfect that the videos end with 2 short but powerful animations, Blame and Empathy, both narrated by Brene Brown. So boom, the nail has been hit on the head. We're back. Week 6 is awesome. Week 5 was a little bit rough, but week 6 sounds like it's going to be amazing. So reading. Included in the reading is a written companion to the video above by Tara Brach, also called The Sacred Art of Listening. Anger is sometimes confused with hatred and identified as an emotion that a spiritual person would not have. Sylvia Borstein clarifies this misunderstanding with the most frequently asked question, which is one of the readings we'll get to. Our typical way of dealing with anger is to either externalize it or stuff it, and in The Answer to Anger, Pema Chodron describes a powerful middle way, neither exploding nor imploding. Conflict Management Styles describes the 4 ways of dealing with conflict outlined above: accommodate, demand, withdraw, blend. And The Heart of Nonviolent Communication, NVC, by Marshall Rosenberg, is an introduction to NVC, a skillful way of communicating in difficult situations. For those wishing to know more about NVC, see the supplemental materials. So it's unfortunately it's the supplemental material. It's been pretty powerful for me. It's OFNER, OFNER. It's observing, feeling, needing, and requesting. So observing is free from judgment and diagnosis. It literally can be as simple as that person is wearing a green t-shirt. That's an observation that you make with your eyes, with your visual sessions. It can be as simple as that. You really want to make observing true. Like you want to, is it green or is it lime green? Is it off green? Is there a pattern? Are the parts of it that are not green? It's about making an observation and not a judgment or an evaluation or an opinion. It's just about observing what is true, and then feeling like how are you feeling in the situation. And what I really like about NVC is it comes with word lists. So here we go. Here's a feelings inventory. So these are all the different ways a person can feel. A person can feel affectionate, excited, grateful, hopeful, peaceful, all these different ways. Now, when your needs are not being met, you're likely to feel anger, confusion, disquiet, fear, sadness. And then, fear is not just fear. You can be afraid, you can be anxious, you can be apprehensive, you can dread, you can be fearful. So even there's more nuance, there's more details to even something we might think of as very clear, like pain. Well, is it an aching pain? Is it agony? Is it temporary? Is it emotional pain, like being lonely? So nonviolent communication is all about getting needs met. And so it's about making observations. It's about feeling. Do you have unmet needs? Well, if so, then you might have some of these feelings. And then that leads you to the N in OFNER. Needs. What need is missing? So like now the cool thing is that makes it really easy is there's these words lists. So let's take a look at what are some needs. So MVC needs list. Yeah, so we have a needs list here. So there's all kinds of needs that people have. The need for peace, the need for play, the need for meeting, the need for all kinds of things for connection, to know and be known, to see and be seen, support, shared reality. That's kind of a big one that's missing in the United States right now. That's what I love about NVC is like it puts it all out there. You make an observation, you figure out what you're feeling, and then from there you can figure out what you're needing. And then you can make requests that allow you to meet those unmet needs. So really powerful, effective thing I found. But unfortunately for this, it's just a supplemental material. All right. So the daily practices. This week we introduced the mountain meditation and the lake meditation, one of which we suggest you try at least once this week in place of some of one of your normal 30-minute practices. These are both shorter practices, 20 minutes. So on the day you do one of these meditations, you will have a shorter practice session. If you'd like a full 30 minutes, you can add 10 minutes of silent meditation on your own that day. For the formal practice this week, we are now at a point where you can freely choose between any of the three main practices you've experienced so far. Body scans, sitting meditation, yoga, and the mountain meditation or lake meditation at least one day. The informal practices up until now have been focusing on the intrapersonal, what's happening inside of you. And now we begin paying attention to the interpersonal, using the communication calendar, noticing what happens when we bring mindfulness to relationships. All right, so I'm not going to make the mistake I made in week one. If you start the formal and informal late in the order here, so you do all the videos, you do the readings, you might not get to it right away. So you got to make sure to get a head start on these because you're expected to do it 6 of the 7 days of a week. So if you miss one day, it's hard to catch up. So let's save each of these for week six. Okay, week 6 formal, week 6 informal. There we go. So here's the week 6 formal. So informal practice log. Okay, so that's the informal. The instructions unfortunately are written in the formal, which makes things a little bit more difficult to navigate. Okay, so now what we can do is pick any of them. I made the mistake last time of thinking I could do yoga 4 days in a row, but with my obesity that I'm dealing with right now, maybe I could have just done chair yoga, but 4 days in a row was a bit too much to expect. I know, right? It's just light, gentle yoga, but I do other things. I'm in other forms of physical activity, so it was just a bit much for me. So I'm not gonna make that mistake again. I'm gonna probably do a body scan or a sitting, something like that, and then I'll play it by ear too. If I'm having a lot of trouble getting it done, then I can do one that's easier. But let's do the lake meditation many times, because I actually live behind a lake, and swimming the lake is one of my favorite things in the world to do. So let's definitely get the. So you can do either the mountain or the lake at least once. So you don't, if you choose the lake, you don't have to do the mountain. So yeah, let me just focus in on the lake meditation, because I want it to really have me imagine the lake and swimming in the lake, and all the wildlife, and the depth of the lake, how deep it is, the jellyfish in the lake. There's these little Chinese square inch jellyfish that are in the lake, and then the turtles everywhere. Oh man, the lake is, yeah. So I'm gonna do 2 lake meditations at least. Maybe even a third one, and then I will try to do some yoga. So let's do it on Wednesday, so 18 2024. So we'll do yoga 1. Yoga 1 is more legs, and then yoga 2 is more arms, so we'll do the legs then. And then 9/19 we'll do the sitting meditation, or the body scan, depending on how I feel. Okay, and then I'll do yoga again on 9/20. All right, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 6 would be 9/21. Let's do the lake again, because I really want to be thinking about that lake. I want to get out there and swim that lake more often, and just spend time by the lake too, because I have internet out there. I can just sit by the lake in a private restricted area that you can only access with a gym membership, which I have. So I just want to spend more time by the lake, so I think thinking more about the lake might help me with that. So this looks good. So let's knock off that lake meditation now, and then that might be it for this video. So and then the informal practice, actually let me read that first. So at each day, at the end of the day before you go to bed, recall and record one communication experience on the communication calendar. All right. It doesn't need to be a particularly difficult communication, simply one in which you can recollect wanting something in particular to come out of the conversation, even if it's simply wanting a smile or a particular response. So note, for the first time in this informal practice, we are expanding our mindfulness to include another person's world, and there is a space, fourth column, to consider what they wanted out of the communication and what they actually got. To do this, you have to, at least for the moment, put yourself in the other party's shoes. A complete exploration of this would, of course, include asking them about this, which would be critical in an important communication. It is a very powerful process that includes a methodology for really understanding another's feelings, wants, needs, perceptives, nonviolent communication, which is well worth exploring. is beyond the scope of this week's practice. So let me look at that briefly. I feel like now's not a good time for that though, because I just finished work, and I really think it makes sense to keep work as separate from this channel as I possibly can. Um, so yeah, right now, since I worked all day, I had professional communications that are under uh, NDA. Talking about them on this channel, I think would be really inappropriate. So I do have a community event tonight. So tomorrow, when I make a video, I'll likely talk about that instead. So yeah, okay, so I'll save this for tomorrow. And for now, let's get this lake meditation out of the way.
This meditation is done in a lying or reclining position and begins by paying attention to the actual sensations of contact and support as you lie here. Noticing where your body is making contact, how your weight is distributed on the floor, bed, or recliner. Actually sensing into your body, feeling your feet, your legs, hips, lower and upper body, arms, your shoulders, and your head. And when you're ready, bring your awareness to breath, the actual physical sensations, feeling each breath as it comes in and goes out, letting the breath be just as it is, without trying to change or regulate it in any way, allowing it to flow easily and naturally, with its own rhythm and pace, knowing that you're breathing perfectly well right now. There's nothing for you to do, allowing a sense of being complete, whole in this very moment, just letting your breath be your breath. As you rest here, letting an image form in your mind's eye of a lake, a body of water, large or small, held in a receptive basin by the earth itself. Noting in the mind's eye in your own heart that water likes to pool in low places. It seeks its own level, asks to be held, contained. And letting this image come gradually into greater focus. Even if it doesn't come as a visual image, allowing the sense of this lake and feeling of its presence. The lake you're invoking may be deep or shallow, blue or green, muddy or clear. With no wind, the surface will be flat, mirror-like, reflecting trees, rocks, sky, and clouds, holding everything in itself momentarily. Wind may come and stir up waves, causing the reflections to distort and disappear. But then sunlight may sparkle in the ripples and dance on the waves in a play of shimmering diamonds. When night comes, it's the moon's turn to dance on the lake, or when the surface is still, to be reflected in it along with the outline of trees and shadows. In winter, the lake may freeze over, yet be teeming with movement and life below. And as you rest here breathing, as you establish this image of a lake in your mind's eye, allowing yourself, when you feel ready, to bring it inside yourself completely, so that your being merges with the lake, becomes one with it, so that all your energies in this moment are held in awareness, with openness and compassion for yourself. in the same way as the lake's waters are held by the receptive and accepting basin of the earth herself. Breathing as the lake, feeling its body as your body, allowing your mind and your heart to be open and receptive, moment by moment, to reflect whatever comes near, or to be clear all the way to the bottom, experiencing moments of complete stillness when both reflection and water are completely clear, and other moments perhaps when the surface is disturbed, choppy, stirred up, reflections and depth lost for the moment. And through it all, as you lie here, simply observing the play of the various energies of your own mind and heart, the fleeting thoughts and feelings, impulses and reactions, which come and go as ripples and waves, noting their effects. In contact with them, just as you are in contact with and feel the various changing energies that play in the lake, the wind, the waves, the light, the shadows and the reflections, the colors and smells. Noticing the effect of your thoughts and feelings. Do they disturb the surface and clarity of the mind's lake? Do they muddy the waters? Is that okay with you? Isn't having a rippling or a wavy surface a part of being a lake? Might it be possible to identify not only with the surface of your lake, but with the entire body of water, so that you become the stillness below the surface as well, which at most experiences only gentle undulations, even when the surface is choppy and ragged? And in the same way, in your meditation practice and in your daily life, can you be in touch not only with the changing content and intensity of your thoughts and feelings, but also with a vast, unwavering reservoir of awareness itself, residing below the surface of your mind. The lake can teach this and remind us of the lake within ourselves. If you find this image to be of value, you may want to use it from time to time to deepen and enrich your meditation practice. You might also invite this lake image to empower you and guide your actions in the world as you move through the unfolding of each day, carrying this vast reservoir of mindfulness within your heart. Dwelling here in the stillness of this moment, until signaled by the sound of the bells, we can be the lake in silence now, affirming our ability to hold in awareness and in acceptance, right now, all our qualities of mind and body. Just as the lake sits held, cradled, contained by the earth, reflecting sun, moon, stars, trees, clouds and sky, birds and light, caressed by the air and the wind, which bring out and highlight its sparkle, its vitality, its potential moment by moment. So in the time that remains before the bells which will mark the end of the meditation, continuing to sustain the lake meditation on your own, in silence, moment by moment, being the lake with its own storms and moments of peace.
lot more difficult now. There was most of that was just dead silence for at least 10 minutes, and then it ended with that bell. So you might have seen there that twice I actually had to hit my headset to check that it was still going on, because I got very anxious about the time, and my mind started to race. You know, oh, what if I miss my thing that I have tonight? And yeah, it was just a tough one for me. It was nice to think about the lake, but all that dead silence really triggered a lot of time anxiety in me, where I felt like the video accidentally paused itself, and I feel like I do have ADHD time blindness, where if 10 hours went by, like it would feel like the few minutes went by. Like sometimes it's like it's hard to assess how much time has gone by. So I became very anxious that I had missed my my chance to attend my 8 o'clock event tonight on time. So, but that's it. There you have it. So I guess I could knock some videos out. That might be nice. I've got, yeah, let me go until 7, and I'll knock off 3 of these videos. If not more than that. The next one's 19 minutes. So yeah, let's knock off 3 videos, and then that'll be the end.
We really underestimate the power of human presence and how that human presence can be expressed through listening. We really underestimate this. And I think also not just the value that it has for the person who's being listened to, but also how it brings us into contact. Good listening brings us into contact with ourselves and with this moment. You know, when I work with young nurses who are sometimes overwhelmed by the situations that they meet, the demands of the system, or the difficulties of working with a particular patient. I think of one young nurse, for example, who would stay with a particular patient, and when she would leave the patient, she would come home and she would just reflect and reverberate, really. She was like a reverberating chamber, you know, rolling around the suffering of this experience of this particular patient. And she came back into work the next day, and she told her supervisor, and her supervisor said, "You need better boundaries." And what the young nurse understood that to mean is that she should withdraw more from this patient who she really cared for and really loved. And so that's what she did. She gradually withdrew, and when the woman died, she felt tremendously guilty. If we had taught that young nurse to just listen differently, she would have been able to stay present with the suffering and also stay balanced in herself. One of the models that we use in listening is to teach people how to listen from their heads, their hearts, and their bodies. When we listen from the head, we listen for content, we listen for the story, and we cultivate our wisdom and clarity and discernment. When we listen from the heart, we listen for the emotional flavor, and we cultivate our altruism and compassion and love. And when we listen from the body, we cultivate our intuition and also our presence. Because you see, the mind and the heart can be swept away into the past or the future, but the body's always here. If it's not, we're in trouble, huh? So when we teach young nurses how to really sense their body, how to really feel the sensations of their body, that gives them a much greater access to their emotional life and a much greater access to the clarity of their mind. So that 3-center check-in, we call it, head, heart, and body. If we could teach nurses to learn to listen from those different centers, they would have a more complete kind of listening, they would be able to stay more balanced in their own selves, and it would be much more available to the people that they serve.
So I don't know if I was doing mindfulness listening there. I'm trying to do another round of the washing machine. So let's move on to the next one. The power of empathy and communication.
Empathy can move mountains. Empathy can change the world, and it changes situations when we bring empathy in. So I had a story that moved me very much that I heard recently, where a woman came into a children's section of a hospital, and a child was having absolute emotional meltdown. She'd been told she couldn't go home today. And she's screaming, "I want to go home, I want to go home." And all the kind people around her, the aides, the nurses, and so on, her mother, are offering her, you know, here's what you can do instead. Mm-hmm. Here's a doll, here's a toy. And she's screaming, "I want to go home." So the woman walks in and kneels down to the child's level and says, "Sweetie, you want to go home." And the child stops screaming. There's silence in the room, and her attention shifts. Without even saying another word, now she's interested in the toys and the dolls and so on. And so what we see happening over and over again is that people hold fixed positions until their position is heard, and then there's a shift. And if we look at the world today, what makes us frustrated, sad, and angry about so many of the things that are going on is people holding fixed positions and unable to hear each other. And even the people that we believe in, who we think ought to be the ones who are prevailing, are also holding fixed positions and not hearing or being heard. And so the power of empathy to open a space where something new can happen is enormously impressive. And yes, in my 44 years now of working with focusing and listening, I've seen it over and over and over again.
If you start to unpack people's complaints about where they work, and again,
all right, so that one was a short one. So the next one probably, yeah, it's the same one, but I like to make sure I'm on track. So next one will be Art of Being Heard.
if you start to unpack people's complaints about where they work, and again, this is from huge companies to being a taxi driver, if you peel away all of it, what you find that has caused the problem is so-and-so did not listen to me. So-and-so did not apologize to me. So-and-so did not notice that I was there, and so-and-so did not thank me for what I did. That's it. Most communications are sequential monologues. I make my talk, you make your talk, and so on. But the space between us, a third thing enters every communication, that is us. That's why it feels one way to tell your ideas to your mother and another way to tell your ideas to your boss, because the space changes. You are the same, the ideas are the same, the space changes. Attunement to that space is the source of skillfulness in conversation. Does that make sense? The first tip is called timing. Timing means knowing when to speak and knowing when to shut up. This is a highly underrated skill. Allowing the space. Choose to have timing in what you want to say. You have to be super aware of the person or the room that you're with, the person you're talking to or the room that you're in. Timing. The second one is called listening. And that may sound very cliche, but I used to have a boyfriend a long time ago named Mark Kreiser, who identified the Kreiser syndrome, which was when you use the time that I am talking to think of what you are going to say next. And that is what most of us are doing in conversation. Listening means dropping that completely and literally giving yourself to the person that you are talking to, giving them your full attention, not holding back. That's actually quite scary. Listening is very brave. Okay? My favorite definition of listening is to cease thinking what your thoughts and to start thinking my thoughts, because that's what you have to do to listen. The third is crazy. It's called agendalessness. We all have an agenda when we're having a business communication, but in order to have that communication be genuine, you have to drop your agenda. A way to drop your agenda is to be curious. Thinking about them, give them what they need, you suddenly take the seat of power in whatever communication you're in. So between these things, timing, listening, agendalessness, and confidence, you will rouse this quality, the single quality that will get people to listen to you. And in our world, getting heard is getting everything. And it is called genuineness. So in this sense, mindful listening has very little to do with what you say and has everything to do with who you are. So I wish you all well in your businesses and in your lives. Thank you.
That's kind of has mindful listening has nothing to say with very little to do with what you say, and much more to do with who you are. That's kind of a little bit cryptic to me. I'm not sure what's exactly meant by that. But I'm going to take a pause, and you know what? I feel like I can get all these videos done, which will put me in a much better situation for the rest of the week. So I'm going to do that. I'd also like to read these quotes. Let me read these quotes, take a pause, and then finish the video. So the first quote: "To listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear." Mark Nepo. So that's the big, changing your mind is the hardest thing possible. So most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Yep, that's a big one too. All of the advice you ever gave your partner is for you to hear. This one I kind of latched onto because I would like imagine myself like in my hobby is juggling, so I'd imagine myself like having this moment with this young juggler where like I give them coaching. I let them have like a copy bootleg of like juggling videos. Don't tell anyone. Well, allegedly, and then I have this moment where I turn them into a great juggler, and what I've realized as the time goes on is like just do like I'm the one who needs that. Like, I'm the one who needs to get better. I'm the one who needs, because the best way to like inspire someone is not to give them a textbook, you know, it's to show them like no, this trick is very possible. I'm doing it right now. So you know, that's kind of something this is a great quote. I like this quote. All the advice you ever gave your partner is for you to hear. Okay. When is the last time that you had a great conversation? A conversation that wasn't just two intersecting monologues, which is what passes for a conversation a lot in this culture. But a great conversation in which you overheard yourself saying things that you never knew you knew, that you heard yourself receiving from somebody's words that absolutely found places within you that you thought you had lost. A conversation that brought the two of you on to a different plane. A conversation that continued to sing in your mind for weeks afterwards. If so, I've had some of them recently. They are food and drink for the soul. We've got a lot of quotes this module. So the second to last quote is listening to an everyday social art, but it's an art we have neglected and much. Oh, listening is, not listening to. So listening is an everyday social art, but it's an art we have neglected and must learn anew. Listening is much more than being quiet while the other person speaks until you can say what you have to say. Curious listening is powered by curiosity, a virtue we can invite and nurture in ourselves to render it instinctive. It involves a kind of vulnerability, a willingness to be surprised, to let go of assumptions, and take in ambiguity. The listener wants to understand the humanity behind the words of the other, and patiently summons one's own best self and one's own best words to the questions. And then the final quote. I suspect that the most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we ever give each other is our attention. When people are talking, there's no need to do anything but receive them. Listen to what they're saying. Care about it. Most times, caring about it is even more important than understanding it. A loving silence often has far more power to heal and connect than the most well-intentioned words. All right, so with that, I'll pause here and then try to get these 4 videos done. So I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So let's get all the videos done. That'll set me up for success later in the week.
So with deep listening, there's a quality of presence where there isn't a lot of selfing, a lot of activity of interpreting, judging, reading into, preparing. There's just openness and receptivity. There's no controlling of anything. But as you know, it's rare that we are listening in that kind of an openness. There's a lot of static usually because we're somewhat in a trance where we're projecting, you know, what we think is being said and where we think it's going to go, and we're being influenced by our wants and our fears about the conversation. So what I'd like to do is just let's move in a little closer to what goes on when we are in conversation, but our listening is somewhat blocked. And if you break it down to wants and fears, when we're in communication and we're not conscious of it, there's a whole layer of wanting that creates static. And you might think of even, you know, just scan a recent conversation with somebody. You might have something in mind where you just spent 5-10 minutes with somebody, and just notice, were there wants there? Did you want that person to experience you in a certain way? That's one of the basic wants we have usually when we're talking. Did you want that person's approval? Did you want the conversation to go in a particular direction? Did you want to prove something? Did you want to fix the person or accomplish something? Do you see what I mean? There's all these layers of wants that are usually there. And the truth is, and it's just like any other spiritual practice, that if there's a goal, if we're striving for something to happen, to make an impression, to have something go our way, to persuade, whatever, that striving interferes with presence, with really recognizing and hearing what's truly there. Some of you might remember the story of a student entering a monastery, and he's really eager to experience enlightenment, and he asks the abbot, you know, how long will it take me, you know, to experience like total satori? And the abbot says, 10 years. And then the guy says, well, what if I work really, really hard? And the abbot says, 20 years. Hey, wait a minute, you just said 10 years. For you, 30 years. But you get the idea that if we're in a conversation and we're trying to make something happen, that gets between us and listening with an awake heart. And it's the same thing as when there's aversion. Aversion's the flip side of wanting. What happens when you're with somebody and you're talking and there's aversion because they're making you feel insecure about yourself? They make you feel like you're being judged or criticized. I mean, how many have had that experience of your partner saying to you, these are the magic 4 words, "We need to talk"? What happens? You get tight. Are you really going to listen? It's hard to listen when we feel hurt or offended, when we feel pushed away by what another's saying. We shut down. It's hard to listen when we feel insecure about having the right response. We want to sound intelligent or like we know what's going on. Then we get tight. It's hard to listen when the other person's not connected with themselves and when they're not speaking from realness, or we get distracted. We get pulled all around by this complex mix of what we're wanting to happen and what we're not wanting to happen. So, and just to say that sometimes the wanting and the aversion doesn't have anything to do with the other person. Sometimes we're in a conversation and we're not listening because we really want to go and get something else done or get some food or be talking to somebody different. Or we're in a conversation and our aversion's not to do with that person. What's going on in that moment is that we feel like we don't have enough time. How many of you have experienced that? You just can't quite listen because I don't have enough time. I feel that so often. So I thought I'd share with you a story that really impacted me on this front. I've mentioned here a number of times a book I love called Tattoos on the Heart. This is Gregory Boyle. So Gregory Boyle is a Jesuit priest who works with gangs in Los Angeles, the most violent parts of Los Angeles. And he creates work programs for them and a sense of community, a huge amount of healing he's been responsible for. So he describes one morning that he's completed Mass, and the next thing he has is a baptism to do. So he's got a little time between the two. So he goes into his office. He's got like about 10 minutes. And a few minutes in, a woman walks into the room, and her name's Carmen. And she's a heroin addict, a gang member, occasional prostitute. He says she's often seen defiantly storming down the street, usually shouting at someone. So she seats herself and jumps right in. And he's got 7 minutes, and so this is what he describes. "I need help." She launches right in, brash and something of a no-shit sister. "Oh," she says, "I've been to like 50 rehabs. I'm known all over, nationwide." She smiles. Her eyes wander around my office, and she studies all the photographs hanging there. She multitasks, and her inspection of the place doesn't derail her stream of consciousness rambling. "The family will arrive for the baptism in a few minutes. I went to Catholic church all my life," she says. "In fact, I graduated from high school even. In fact, right after graduation is when I started to use heroin." Carmen enters some kind of trance at this point, and her speech flows to deliberate and halting. "And I have been trying to stop since the moment I began." Then I watch as Carmen tilts her head back until it meets the wall. She stares at the ceiling, and in an instant her eyes become these 2 ponds, water rising to meet their edges, swollen banks spilling over. Then, for the first time, really, she looks at me and straightens. "I am a disgrace." Suddenly her shame meets mine, for when Carmen walked through the door, I had mistaken her for an interruption. So you understand that when we have that mantra of "I don't have enough time," what happens to anything that comes up? It becomes an object out there that's in our way. What happens to listening? We're not there for it. I want to name one more, most basic level of fear that interferes with listening, and I alluded to it, and that's the fear of not being here. That rather than listen, because listening requires really letting go of our self-agenda, really kind of emptying out. We're preparing to reassert that I'm here. It's like that desire we keep having to say, "I'm here, I exist." We keep having to put our existence out there. And listening's the opposite. It's almost like saying, "Okay, let it go, make space for whatever is coming through." So we're preparing, we're uncomfortable, and we don't know who we are when we're not planning our response. There's a strong tendency to want to assert a self who knows somebody. This is the fundamental self-sense, holding on to itself. This is why listening is so profound. That when we really begin this practice, it goes right to the heart of a path of liberation. It's no different than when we're just sitting and practicing and listening to what's going on inside us. It requires putting down our evaluations of what we're experiencing, our judgments, our interpretations, which means we're putting down our self-sense and just letting life be as it is, liberating and challenging. So the key to this very sacred art of listening is to not control or direct what's going on. Not to pursue our wants, not to avoid our fears, to recognize what's going on inside us, but to stay. And we're not trying to control another person. Here's pretty much my favorite description. This is Mark Nepo. To listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. To listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. take a moment, if you will, just to pause and close your eyes and perhaps bring to mind one person that you'd like to deepen your capacity for listening with. You might bring to mind a recent occasion of conversing, and without judging yourself, just to notice. If you were asking the question, well, what's between me and listening with an awake heart? What might have been stopping you? Was there an agenda where you wanted something? Maybe approval or cooperation or their understanding? Was there aversion in some way? Some fear of judgment? A feeling of not enough time? How did you control the experience if you weren't just simply listening? Did you get distracted into your own thoughts? Did you try to steer the conversation? Plan a response? Imagine for a moment if you were redoing. What would your intention be? How would you sense your own intention around listening? Just using your own words. What do you wish? To listen is to lean in softly, with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. The willingness to discover, to understand more deeply. Yeah, so when you're ready, feel free to open your eyes. So the gift of this path of really deliberately deepening our capacity for listening is that we spend more moments where we're resting in our true nature, in a full awareness that's not centralized around self, that's open, sensitive, engaged. And for the other, it creates an atmosphere of love. And listening, offering our presence, is the deepest expression of love. It's such an invitation for another person. It makes it safe for the other person to unfold and to blossom. And when somebody listens to us without judgment, with that openness and that sensitivity, we unfold in that presence. One of my favorite descriptions of the power of listening is to imagine that our essence, this creative spirit that all of us have, is like a fountain. And that it's the source of the fountain is for all of us, that same pure awareness, intelligence, love. It's all the same for all of us. But when we haven't been listened to, that creative source, that fountain, kind of dries, it shrivels. When it's listened to, it dries, it really flows. So, but when we haven't been listened to, and when we don't listen to ourselves, it kind of dries up and it gets clogged. And then what we express is kind of murky or vague or confused. Sometimes you'll talk to people, or you'll find yourself speaking in a way where you're really speedy or nervous, and there's no silences, and there's no real connection with what's there. And that's because you haven't had that much of that atmosphere of real listening presence given to you, or you haven't given it to yourself. So it happens for a lot of us. And sometimes all that'll come out when there's that clogged upness, when we haven't really been listened to, or when we don't listen to ourselves, all that'll come out is more superficial talk, kind of nervous, prepackaged stuff. I think we all know about that. We know when we're in that state, when we're stressed and not in touch with ourselves, and we can sense it for others. Those are the times when, instead of being connected, we're kind of hijacked by the part of us that's wanting to prove or protect or defend. And so we're living from externals, really what's expected, what we should be saying, not communing from the depths. So listening, when we offer that to each other, it invites that creative fountain to begin to flow again. It offers a space for inner truth to unfold itself and really shine through. But just to say, it takes patience, both offering listening inward and to others, because sometimes initially there's kind of muddy waters, and we need to kind of include that and give space for that so something pure and clear come forth. Does that make sense? That it would take time? It's an amazing gift that we can offer, even just a little bit, even with somebody that we don't know, we're not going to spend much time with. Just offering that space, something begins to happen. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. You can call it compassionate listening. You listen with only one purpose, to help him or her to empty his heart. Even if he says things that are full of wrong perceptions, full of bitterness, you're still capable of continuing to listen with compassion. You just listen with compassion and help him to suffer less. 1 hour like that can bring transformation and healing. So what are the basics in this training? It's really the same as when we meditate. We set our intention. Okay, when I go back home and I'm with my partner or with my teenage son or with my father or whatever it is, I plan to listen, to really see if I can let go of all the interrupting static and just be there. And then it's very helpful to have an anchor, to have something to keep coming back to, your physical sensations in your body, or your breath, something just to say, I'm here, and a commitment to being willing to notice whatever the resistances are. So as you're listening, you notice you're judging, or as you're listening, you're noticing unpleasantness and not wanting to be there. So part of you just names it and forgives it. It's okay. You have to be open to recognizing what's going on inside you, or you can't truly be listening to another. And then I find the self-coaching it's a really brilliant approach. If there's sometimes just a few words that you remind yourself of, like sometimes I'll just say there's plenty of time, even if I don't believe it. Really, just saying it because some deep part of me knows it's true. You know, my neurotic egoic self that wants to always get more done doesn't believe it, but there's a deeper place that knows that if I can really pause, that there's some timeless presence there, that's where everything that I cherish is possible. And I'm really pausing when the ideas of a future and a past just start dissolving.
All right, so I admit I wasn't really listening. I was vacuuming, which was very audible as I was doing that. So we've got another 15 minutes. That should take me to 7:30. I got to hit the road at 7:30, and I kind of want to take a shower before my event tonight. So, yeah, I got to end it here. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.